All right, our lesson today is to be able to find the circumference of a circle. Some things we need to know are: is a circle is a set of all points in a plane that are the same distance from a point called the center. Uh, we have the radius of a circle. The radius is the distance from the center to any point on the circle, right? So the radius is this distance here. It's the distance from the center to any point on the circle. The diameter is the distance across the center uh, of the circle, right? So that's your diameter. The relationship between diameter and radius is that the radius is half of the diameter, or you could say the diameter is 2 times the radius. Okay, and that's what's detailed here. The diameter is equal to 2 times the radius. The radius is 1/2 of the diameter. Okay, let's take a look at some examples. The diameter of a circle is 20 feet. Find the radius. Well, if the radius is half of the diameter, right, if the radius is half of the diameter, right, the diameter being 20, we take half of that, the radius is going to be 10. If the radius of the circle is 7 meters and we find the diameter is 2 times whatever the radius is. The radius then would be 2 times 7. The radius would be 14. So what's that going to look like down here? In example 1, the diameter of a circle is 16 centimeters. Find the radius. All right. The diameter is going to be equal to, we want to find the radius there. Oops, my bad. Right, let's do that. The radius is going to be equal to whatever the diameter is divided by 2. So the radius is going to be equal to 16 divided by 2, right, or 8 centimeters. If the radius is 9, find the diameter. The diameter is going to be equal to 2 times whatever the radius is, right? So the diameter is going to be equal to 2 times 9. So the diameter is going to be equal to 18 yards. Okay, and these are just some more examples down here, right, using that formula. So we'll do each one of these. Example A, right, if we're given the diameter, let's find the radius. The radius is going to be equal to the diameter divided by 2. Right, so the radius is going to be equal to 23 divided by 2. And 23 divided by 2 is going to be equal to 11.5. And those are centimeters. If we're doing example B, right, we're asked to find the radius, or we're given the radius, so we're asked to find the diameter. So the diameter is going to be equal to 2 times the radius. The diameter is going to be equal to 2 times 3. So the diameter is going to be equal to 6. And those would be inches. We have example C. The radius is going to be equal to the diameter divided by 2. And so the radius is going to be equal to that diameter of 16 divided by 2. So that's going to be equal to 8. And those are yards. And then example D. The diameter is going to be equal to 2 times the radius. Diameter is going to be equal to 2 times 5.2. So the diameter is going to be equal to 10.4. And we would just call them units because we don't know if they're inches or feet or yards. So we would just say 10.4, whatever the units are. All right? Okay, let's move on to the next page. The distance around a circle is called the circumference. The ratio of the circumference to the diameter is the same for every circle and is represented by the Greek letter pi. The value of pi can be approximated as a decimal using 3.14 or as a fraction using 22/7. There are 2 formulas that we use to find the circumference of a circle. If we're given the diameter of the circle and we want to find the distance around the circle or the circumference, we use this formula here. Circumference is going to be equal to pi times the diameter. If we're given the radius, we would use this formula here. Circumference is going to be equal to 2 times pi times the radius. All right? So let's do some problems here. All right, we're asked to find the circumference of the flying disk and use 3.14 for pi. So if we want to use 3.14 for pi, circumference is going to be equal to 2 times pi times r. Circumference is going to be equal to 2 times the 3.14, which we're told to use for pi, times the 5 for the radius. So circumference is going to be equal to 31.4. And those are inches, right? Not squared inches. Circumference is measured in linear units, right? Not square units. Example B. It says find the circumference of the watch face. Use 22/7 for pi. Right, and we look at this watch face here. We're told that the diameter is 28 millimeters. So we would write our formula first. Circumference is equal to pi times the diameter. If we're given the diameter of the circle, we use this formula. And in the previous problem where we were given the radius, right, we would use 2 times pi times r. So circumference is going to be equal to, we're told to use 22/7 times the diameter, which is 28. Right? We're going to put that 28 over 1. Going to divide out 7 and 28 by 7. So that becomes 1. That becomes 4. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, we get 88 millimeters for the circumference there. All right. Try a couple of other examples. All right. Let's see. Our first example here, we're asked to find the circumference. We're given the diameter. So if we're given the diameter, we're going to use the following formula. Circumference is pi times the diameter. So circumference is going to be equal to, we'll use 22/7 times 70. Put that 70 over a 1. Divide out 7 and 70. That becomes 1. That becomes 10. And 22 times 10 is going to be 220. Right? And those would be inches. Right? The next example, we're given a radius. And if we're given a radius, we're going to use the following formula. Circumference is 2 times pi times r. So circumference is going to be equal to 2. We're told to use 22/7 for pi. And then times the radius, which is 7/8. All right, let's see what we can divide out here. Put the 2 over 1. Divide out those 7s. That becomes 1 and 1. Divide out this and this, that becomes 1 and 4. And then 4 and 22, we can divide out, that would be what? 2 over 11, right? It's going to be 11. That's going to be 2. So when we multiply numerator times numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator times denominator, we get 11 over 2, right? Which is going to be 5.5, right? And those would be feet. All right. Next page. Let's see what we got. Find the circumference of the objects. All right, we want to use this time 3.14 for pi. All right, so let's use 3.14. All right, problem number 3 I'll do over here. We're going to use circumference is going to be equal to 2 times pi times r because we're given the radius of the circle, so we use that formula. Circumference is going to be equal to 2 times pi. We're going to use, let's see, I don't know, 22/7, why not? 22/7 times 2. And let's see, what can we divide out anything? No, we can't. So 2 times 22 is 44. 44 times 2 is going to be 88. 88/7. And 7 times 12 is 84. 84 with 4 left over, so that's going to be 12 and 4/7. Those are centimeters for the circumference of that circle. All right. Next one, circumference is going to be equal to pi times the diameter this time because we're given the diameter. So circumference is going to be equal to, we'll do the 22 over 7 for pi, times the diameter, which is 14. Those are nice friendly numbers. Put that over 1. Divide out 7 and 14 by 7. That becomes 1. That becomes 2. We multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, right? And that's going to give us 44, and those are going to be feet. All right. Right. This last example, right, circumference is going to be equal to pi times the diameter because we're given the diameter of the circle. Circumference is going to be equal to 3.14 we'll use for pi this time, times the diameter, which is 9. So circumference is going to be equal to, what's that, 28.26. And the units here would be inches. All right. A couple more, right, just to get some practice in. Find the circumference of each circle. Use 3.14 or 22 over 7 for pi. Round to the nearest tenth if necessary. And guys, it really doesn't matter, which value you want to use for pi. If you want to use 22 over 7, that's fine. If you want to use 3.14 for pi, that's fine. Right? Bottom line is we're approximating pi. So we can use either one of those approximations. Right? Example 4, we're given a diameter. So we're going to use circumference. It's going to be equal to pi times the diameter. Circumference is going to be equal to, we'll use 3.14 times the diameter of 15. And 3.14 times 15 is going to be 47.1. Right? And those would be meters. In the next example, we're looking for the circumference, but we're given the radius. So circumference is going to be equal to 2 times pi times r. Circumference is going to be equal to 2 times pi. We'll use the 22 over 7, right? Because I see a 7 times my r, which is 7. Put that over 1, that over 1. Divide out, divide out. So we wind up with circumference is going to be equal to 44. And those would be yards. 44 yards as our answer. All right. Let's continue. The circumference of the roll of caution tape decreases 10.5 inches after a construction worker uses some of the tape, which is the best estimate for the roll after the decrease. Well, this is about 31 inches. 10.5, that's about 11, right? So if we decrease that, right, that's going to be 31 take away 11 is going to be, what's that, 20 inches, right? And then we want to divide that by 3 because if we use the following formula, if circumference is pi times the diameter, and we're looking for the diameter, right? So I would take this equation and solve this equation for d. So that would mean I would have to divide both sides by pi. They cancel. So we get the following formula. The diameter is going to be equal to the circumference divided by pi. And the circumference divided by pi essentially means that the diameter of the circle is always about 3 times, or the circumference is always about 3 times the diameter. So if we take this number and divide it by 3, we get approximately 7 inches, right? So that would be answer B, all right? Because we have our circumference and we divide it by pi, right? In pi, we're dividing by using 3 as an approximation for pi here. So 20 divided by 3 is going to be about 7 inches, all right? Okay, let's see. Next example. Says, what if the circumference of the roll of tape decreases 5.25 inches? Estimate the diameter of the roll after the decrease. All right, well, it was about 31 inches. We're going to decrease it about 5 inches. That's going to give us 26 inches. And remember, pi is approximately 3. So we divide that by 3, right? Because we know that, oops, let's delete that. We know that the diameter is going to be circumference divided by pi, right? So we take our circumference, which is 26, want to divide it by our approximation for pi. 26 divided by 3 is about 9 inches, right, would be about 9 inches for an approximation there. All right. Let's continue with a few more examples here. Big Ben is a famous clock tower in London, England. The diameter of the clock face is 23 feet. Find the circumference of the clock face round to the nearest tenth. Well, we're given what? The diameter here, right? So we're going to use circumference is going to be equal to pi times the diameter. Let's say that's going to be pi times the diameter. So circumference is going to be equal to the 3.14 times the diameter, which is 23. And 3.14 times 23 is about 72.2. And those are going to be feet. Right? If we look at that next example, it says a circular fence is being placed to surround a tree. The diameter of the fence is about 4 feet. How much fencing is used? All right. Circumference is equal to pi times the diameter. We're given the diameter here, so circumference is going to be equal to the 3.14 times the 4 feet. So circumference is going to be equal to about 12.6. And those are going to be feet. All right. Okay, let's do a couple more. The semicircles. A semicircle is one half of a circle. Find the perimeter of the semicircular region. Well, the straight side is 6 meters long, right? So we know that this is 6. And we know that this distance around here is half of a circumference. So we're going to have to find that half of a circumference. But the perimeter itself is going to be equal to the diameter of the circle, right, which is this distance here. That's the diameter plus the circumference of the circle divided by 2. That's how we're going to find the perimeter. So that's going to give us the following. The perimeter is going to be equal to the 6, right, because that's the diameter of the circle, plus pi times the diameter, which is, pi times the diameter, which is 6. And then we need half of that. So if we do a little math here, right, we have to use our order of operations. So we have to do the pi times the 6 divided by 2. All right, so that's going to be 6 plus the 3.14 times the 6. We're dividing that by 2. So the perimeter is going to be equal to the 6 plus 9.42. So the perimeter is going to be equal to 15.42. Right, and those are going to be meters. Right? But be careful when we're using the calculator, we have to use the order of operations. So I have to find this amount first. So notice this 9.42 is the 3.14 times 6 divided by 2. That's where that 9.42 comes. And then the last thing we do in our order of operations is add that 6. So we have to be careful when we're finding the perimeters there. All right? So we'll do a couple of these problems down here. All right? Make sure we do these correctly. All right? And we'll number each one of them. So we'll start with problem 7 here. Problem 7, I want to write my formula. Perimeter is going to be equal to the diameter plus the circumference over 2. So my perimeter is going to be equal to 2, which is my diameter here. That's 2. Plus the circumference. And the circumference is going to be the 3.14. Right? Pi times the diameter, which is 2. But we only need half of that circumference. So it's 2 plus pi, all right, let's rewrite that, all right, so that's going to be, perimeter is going to be equal to the 2 plus pi times the diameter over 2, right, so that's our next step. We're using 3.14 for pi, we're using 2 for our diameter, but we're dividing that by 2. Perimeter is going to be equal to the 2 plus, we have to do 3.14 times 2 divided by 2, it's going to be 3.14. So our last step is the addition step, and that's going to be 5.14, right? And those are going to be feet. Right. Next one, problem 8. Write the formula. Perimeter is going to be equal to the diameter plus the circumference over 2. So the perimeter is going to be equal to that diameter, which is 7, plus the circumference, which is going to be pi times the diameter over 2. So the perimeter is going to be equal to 7 plus 3.14 times the diameter of 7 over 2. All right, using the order of operations, that's going to be 7 plus 3.14 times 7 divided by 2. It's going to be 43.96. So we add those together. The perimeter is going to be equal to 50.96. Right, and those would be centimeters. Right. Then our last example here, right, let's scroll up a little bit so we could see it. We're given a radius, right? So if the radius is 15, we need this whole distance here, right, to find the circumference. Right, so that's going to be 30 inches, right, is going to be my diameter. So perimeter is going to be equal to the diameter plus the circumference over 2. Perimeter is going to be equal to my diameter, which is 30, plus pi times the diameter over 2. Perimeter is going to be equal to the 30 plus the 3.14 times my diameter, which is 30 over 2. Perimeter is going to be equal to, let's see, 30 plus 3.14 times 30 divided by 2. That's going to be 47.1. So the perimeter, when we add that together, is going to be 77.1, right? And they would be inches. All right. Well, that's our lesson for today. I hope that's been helpful, and we will see you soon.